Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Garth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. And let's say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, let's see, where are we? Oh, wait, I got the wrong, no wonder. It's like, no, wrong agenda. What is that? Okay, thank you. Okay, move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Garth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Okay, individuals who, we're going to open up public forum. Individuals who wish to address the board should state their name and address for the record, make their points as clearly and concisely as possible, and limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes, which may not be shared with or yielded to others. All comments shall be directed to the Board of Township Trustees. Thank you in advance for your comments. Anyone? Going once? Okay. Okay. We will close public forum. Trustee comments.
Me first. Merry Christmas. That's all I got. And
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
New Year.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Let's see, I don't really think first, well, I do want to, actually, I do have the comments. This is, well, we're not there yet, but as, probably, the end of this meeting, I have served as, board chair for this year, last year, and I will not be board chair next year, but it's been my pleasure to serve as board chair, and thank you all. I wanted to thank our staff for everything they do to support me in this role and the other trustees, Brian in his role, so that's what I want to say. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure to serve, so thank you.
You did a fine job.
Well, thank you.
I mean, except for a couple resolutions you botched. but
What are you channeling, Andrew?
It's
Okay.
been great to work with you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate the call out to this wonderful team. We're very grateful for all that they do, and thank you for saying that, team.
Okay. Okay, Brian, fiscal officer.
All right, you have the November financials in front of you. So overall, we're at 100% of estimated collections. The general fund collected 113% of what we've estimated so far. We have one more month to go. We'll have a little bit more, especially some interest for the month of December. Nothing too much to note other than that. Item B, we do have a resolution for authorizing transfers. So ideally, we will get a grant, and then we'll receive the money, and we'll appropriate it, and we'll spend it. Sometimes we we'll get awarded the grant, but we need to spend money before we receive the funds. So the general fund will advance money to the fund that is going to get the grant fund, and then we'll receive the money and advance it back to the general fund to repay it. So in this instance, that happened, and there's a local portion. So it wasn't 100% grant, so there's a local portion, and so we advanced it to those funds, but what we got wasn't equal to what we advanced and what we spent, so we have to convert that advance, because there's no more money to send back to the general fund, so we have to convert the advance to a transfer. So we're effectively transferring the rest to that fund.
Thank you for explaining that. I move to adopt the resolution authorizing transfers.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Garth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
And then item C is the year-end revenue and appropriation adjustments. So when we originally do appropriations and we'll take beginning fund balances that we have, and we estimate throughout what we're going to collect for the year. That sets what we can appropriate. And so then we'll appropriate what we think we're going to spend, and then we cannot spend above what we appropriate. So those levels dictate what we can do. And throughout the year, we'll adjust those. If we get money that we didn't expect that we would get, or we don't get money that we were expecting, we'll adjust our estimated revenues. And we do the same thing with the appropriations. If we can't spend what we thought we would, we'll decrease it, and if we get get money, we'll increase appropriation. So we do that throughout the end of the year, and then at the end of the year, we kind of do a little cleanup and make things closer to what they actually were, and so we're doing some adjustments here.
I move to adopt the fiscal year in revenue and appropriation adjustments.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
And then we have the meeting minutes for October 17th.
I move to adopt the meeting minutes from October 17th, 2024.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Nothing from Margaret, right?
I drafted or reviewed the legislation in the packet, but I have no specific report.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Rick?
Good evening. I have 5 things tonight. Hopefully we'll get through them fairly quickly. The first thing I wanted to announce was Assistant Chief Bob Herlinger is a member of the Hamilton County Fire Investigation Team, and last week he won the Fire Investigator of the Year from that organization.
Wow.
And that's a combination of his seeking training, the number of times he got called out and went to scenes and actually investigated fires. So he investigates our fires, some of our fires, and then he also investigates other departments as well, so their fires. So he received that. Some of the things he does is he interviews individuals, he collects evidence. He's taken some classes in photography to learn how to present them as evidence. He diagrams scenes, he takes measurements. They have a scientific process they use for the analysis of fire effects that identify fire origin by the burn patterns, things like that. And then they hopefully come up with a cause of determination and origin. So I don't know if he's ever testified in court, but if he hasn't, I'm sure that's in his near future. So I just wanted to publicly recognize him for that. He couldn't be here tonight, but I told him that I wanted to make sure I got that out in the public forum so everybody knew about his accomplishments.
I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yep,
Thank
please
you.
Pass on our
Yes.
congratulations.
I will do that. The next thing we have is a resolution requesting authorization for the purchase of equipment and supplies through a joint purchasing program that is called Sourcewell. It's based in Minnesota. So basically, it's a tool that allows us, Minnesota has rules about bidding, and so to make sure everybody gets the lowest price, they could do state bidding just like Ohio does. And if we become a member of that bidding organization, we could take advantage of organizations that submit bids in that particular bidding collective that may not have been in Ohio state bid. So it basically gives us the ability to seek the absolute lowest prices on things we may procure, such as vehicles, tires, things like that, through that particular bidding cooperative. And the request is just authorizing us to become a member of that bidding collaborative. And I want to thank Ms. Comey for this, among many things that I'm presenting tonight, for the amount of work she put into bringing these together, because they're not very simple. They're rather complicated when we're talking about out-of-state bidding processes.
Thank you. I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the purchase of equipment, materials, supplies, and services through an intergovernmental purchasing cooperative pursuant to authority of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code, and authorizing the Township Administrator to enter into that certain Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program participation agreement with Sourcewell on behalf of the township as a participating entity.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
So the third item the fire department has tonight is seeking authorization to enter into a contract to, I'm gonna call it purchase a new medic, but what this is the process, and we've talked about this before. It is actually the remount of a medic unit. What it really quantifies as is a purchase of a chassis, taking our box off and patient compartment off of our current medic unit, refurbishing it and putting it back on this new chassis. Doing that saves us in the ballpark of $115,000 to $150,000 per medic unit. So it's like having a new truck. We got a new motor, new engine, new drivetrain, which is where all the problems typically, and electrical, which where the problems usually caused by age. When we got a box, there's nothing wrong with it. We get new flooring, some things, we put it in, and we got essentially a brand new medic for, you know, $100,000 plus less than we would have bought a new one. And we can get this in a year. The build for a new medic is 3 years out right now. So I'm just looking for authorization to allow the township administrator to enter into that contract once it's reviewed and approved by township legal counsel.
I move to authorize the purchase of equipment pursuant to section 505.101 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
The fourth thing we have tonight is authorization to enter into a contract under the same terms. It's basically for the township administrator to sign the contract once it's approved by legal counsel. Samsara is basically an auditing system, is what I'll call it, software auditing. So what it does is it uses global GPS to basically watch our trucks and our medic units, and it reports everything from warning lights that go on. So if a warning light goes on and our operator is not in the cab to see it or misses it because he's driving on the road, it records that and sends it to our system and tells us we hit a warning light. It monitors temperatures, and we've really had some problems with our turbos, so which are overheating, so it monitors the temperatures. It monitors our radiator system, our DEF, which is our diesel emission fluid. If that gets too low, it can cause problems with the truck. It also monitors speed, it monitors hard braking, and it monitors curves. We're replacing a system through Verizon. We have Verizon right now that does a few of those things. Samsara is a company that does just this augmenting truck analysis. And we actually used the Verizon system once. One of our vehicles was in an accident, and we were able to take the exact speed of the medic unit at the time for the 30 seconds before it was in the accident and at the time that the vehicle was in the accident, which supported that we were under the speed limit and that our individuals had done nothing wrong. So I'm asking for authorization via the resolution to enter into that contract with the Samsara software.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the purchase of equipment pursuant to section 505.37 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
So the last thing I have tonight is consideration of a resolution which would allow the township administrator to enter into an MOU with approval of the township legal counsel that would allow us to lease, and I use that word lease, for a $0 monthly payment. What happens is that we just received that boat through the grant. I know that was one of the things that Mr. Johnson was talking about, the reimbursement for that boat. It's here. We're doing a lot of training on it. It's going to be ready to hit the water very shortly. And one of the things that concerns us is what it's going to take to get it from Station 10 down to the river and get it in the water. Well, we've been talking with Four Seasons, who is just about 2 miles down the river from our jurisdiction line. They have offered us a free in-water slip for 0 cost. So this is a win-win because we don't have to worry about hooking up the trailer in a hurry where things might be overlooked. The boat is in there all the time. It's under camera security all the time. We are going to lock it up, but it's under constant security of cameras they have on scene. It's off to the side. They like it because it presents an element of security. When you come in, you see this boat with lights and the markings of Anderson Township, even though it's slightly in the city. And we've calculated that we can save anywhere from 7 to 12 minutes in response by going down, getting the boat and riding it up, as opposed to taking it down, backing it into the water. So this is a win-win for us, and it benefits Four Seasons Marina as well. So we're just looking for authorization via the resolution to enter into that MOU.
I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the memorandum of understanding relating to the lease of a boat dock slip at Four Seasons Marina for housing of township watercraft pursuant to section 505.37 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Second.
Mrs. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs.
And
Stone?
Yeah.
Four Seasons is owned by town property, so
Yes.
just so everyone knows.
I do have one last thing. I did want to mention that our toy drive, which just wrapped up about a week and a half ago, Stuff the Medic, you might have seen it out front of Beachmont. It collected 1,055 toys,
Oh, my gosh.
which will be donated to the interparish ministries that we do every year. And their concentration is getting out to families in need in this local area. So Lieutenant Doug Egan, firefighter Wade Cooley, firefighter Adam Flanagan, firefighter Ron Kincaid, and everybody that works at Station 6, because that's where they bring them 24/7. Those guys were constantly accepting them. So I wanted to thank all them, but especially Lieutenant Doug Egan, who basically takes that unit around at different places where we have public events and makes that event a very worthwhile and very successful drive. And I want to thank the community because couldn't have done it without their generosity. So I want to thank them for not many here, but if they see this, certainly thank you. And that's all we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
That is great.
One more fire department not issue. And it's not, doesn't have anything to do with this board or even chief, but we are, a group of us bringing back the Fireman's Festival next year. And we've made very good progress with that, so there'll be some announcements coming out soon about a title sponsor and some other things about it being held down at Belterra Park the weekend of May 30 and 31st. So I know there's a lot of people that miss that festival, maybe a few that don't, but there's a lot of people that do, and we think it's the right time to bring it back, so myself and a few others have been working on it. So more to come on that.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thanks for your work on that. Okay. Nothing for Paul. Okay. Oh, you're doing Eric. Okay.
Yes, yes. Good evening. I'm standing in for Eric Luganbuehl this evening. What he asked before the board is authorization to prepare and bid the 2025 paving program. This would be paving that would be done on streets where curb work was done this year. We typically do the concrete work throughout the township in year one and then come back in and do the paving in year two. That saves on the cost associated with mobilizing equipment for these particular projects. So Eric proposes to advertise for bids in January. If the board approves this motion before it, the bids would be opened in early February and then presented to the board for its consideration on February 20th. The goal is to get the paving started by April 1st and finished by August. We do our best to work around school bus traffic and other traffic, doing it in midsummer there. We are looking at an estimated cost of about $2.8 million. That would be funded from 1994 TIF dollars. As a reminder, and I know the board knows this, but our last public safety levy was in 1998. We have been able to stretch that levy for as long as we have, largely because we have the TIF funds to use it for paving the roadways. Our paving cycle is tremendous. We get to every road in the township as quickly as possible, and usually more often than in other communities. So there is a list of roadways There are 2 additional roadways that don't have curbs, so it'll be everyone that had curbs done this year and 2 others. Should the board proceed with approving a contract in February, we'll post that list on the township's website so everyone is aware.
Thank you. I move to authorize bid preparation and advertisement for the 2025 paving program.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I can roll right into
Yes.
Township Administration. The first item is a resolution that would authorize a new software for our events rentals, our events management. Ms. Sanders, who is our events coordinator, does a tremendous job. She has been working with the same software that we purchased back in 2008 when we first started doing event rentals, when we moved into this facility. And that software, there's a diagram portion that allows her to, say if somebody wanted to rent this room, to kind of work with the renter to show where the tables and chairs will be placed, other amenities that that renter would like to utilize. And that diagramming portion is no longer supported in the software program. So there is a resolution before you that would authorize us executing a proposal with Event Pro software, and I would ask for your consideration.
Thank you. I move to adopt the resolution approving and authorizing the execution of proposal of Profit Systems Incorporated for the provision of Event Pro software.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Ms. Parker has the next item, and then she will be followed by Mr. Severs.
As I explained in my memo to the board, we received 3 renewal quotes from companies that provide employee benefits. Each of these carriers are planning to renew with us, if the board agrees, for a 0% rate increase. Those carriers are Superior Dental, MetLife Disability, and Reliance Standard Life. So unless the board has any questions or comments, I would ask that board renew our coverage with these companies for the 2025 calendar year.
I move to authorize the Assistant Township Administrator for Human Resources to renew the 2025 plan year contracts with Superior Dental, MetLife, and Reliance Standard as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. As the community is aware, we have a large number of volunteers that help us with our day-to-day and monthly operations and various projects and programs that the township's involved with. All told, there's probably about 80 volunteers that help us on an annual basis, and it's a good time of year as we draw to a close and we consider appointments for the future years to celebrate and recognize those individuals for their contributions. So tonight we have a motion before you for the township's non-statutory committees. These would be those that aren't outlined in the Ohio Revised Code. So these are more advisory committees that advise staff and advise the board on a variety of topics. So if it's the board's pleasure, I'll be happy to read staff's recommendation for the appointment to those committees. There are 5 different committees that we're looking at, and I'll just read through those here individually and to call out each individual's name as well. The first is for the Green Space Advisory Committee, and that's for Ronald Edgerton as chair, Paul Brosh, Russ Romey, Rick Voss, and then Brian Johnson as the fiscal officer serves on that committee. The second would be the Anderson Township Tree Committee. Recommendation for John Halpin as chair, Bruce Burno, Scott Berline, John Butcher, Carol King, Tim Kloppenberg, Chris Fetzer, Jim Romke, Ron Trenkamp, Rick Voss, and Joe Wilking for that group. The third committee is the Township's Betterment Commission. This is our 501c3 nonprofit organization. And the recommendation is for Chris Cawley, Amy Broghamer, Katie Buckman, Ron Edgerton, and Dee Stone. The fourth group that we have is for the Anderson Township Senior Center Advisory Committee. This would be for Marcia Cole as chair of the committee, Julie Bissinger, Sherry Burnside, Sarah Salenza, Abby Lackmeyer, Stephen Long, Mary Nicholson, and George Zabrecki. And we may indeed have additions to that in 2025, but at this point we're reappointing the current members. And then lastly is the Anderson Township Plan Implementation Committee. This will be the second year for this group that was consolidated from a number of other citizen committees that we had in the past. And the recommendation is to appoint Vicki Beck, Katie Buckman, Matt Chaffin, Kevin Comerford, Dwayne Donahue, Stephen Fagans, Peg Fenner, Brian Gay, Andrea Gennari, Lindsay Griffiths, John Halpin, Joe Heiss, Nicole Hunter, Philip Kiley, Jay Lewis, Elizabeth Meyer, Ann Miller, Dan O'Rourke, Zach Peterson, Paul Shekels, Karen Schwamberger, Paul Cyan, Cindy Sieber, Carl Sieber, Susan Wheatley, and Jim Willis to that committee for 2025. Again, we greatly appreciate, and I think I speak on behalf of all of staff that work with these groups. These members give of their time for the betterment of our community, and we appreciate that time and interest that they have. All of these committee appointments would be for one calendar year, as we typically do a call for new members each fall. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you. I know that's a lot of work involved in getting those committees together, so we appreciate your work on that.
Yes, thank you, and for all the citizens that have volunteered. I'm very grateful. I move to approve the 2025 Citizen Committee appointments as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. And as we move forward, you'll see some of the projects that come out of these groups, one of which, unfortunately, we're coming to you tonight for is item 15D, which is the 5 Mile Improvements Change Order. This is the work that's currently ongoing at the intersection of 5 Mile Road and Town Center Way at the top of the hill, adjacent to the Anderson Town Center and the Vantage development. The board approved a contract earlier this fall for Bansal Construction. That work had begun. Unfortunately, you can only kind of engineer and predict so much, but we ran into some serious issues on the west side of 5 Mile Road that required both the utilization of special boring equipment and ultimately the recommendation from our engineer for a retaining wall. So there is a staff recommendation, and actually the memo does not coincide with the motion, so I'm going to go to the motion because there are actually multiple change orders involved here. But staff has a recommendation for change orders in the amount of $55,809.01. Again, the project cost for this will be almost $400,000. That does include a contingency that already exists, but because these were larger than we would like and have comfort with that 10% figure, we're coming to you for these separately. Of that, about approximately $400,000, again, about $236,000 is funded by the Metro Transit Infrastructure Fund. So our net cost is under the $200,000 and is suggested to be paid for by the 1994 TIF. If there are questions, I'm happy to address that. In the board packet is the substantial amount of background. There's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of weeks to work through this. But again, our goal in bringing this before you at this point in time is to keep the project moving forward so that the light can be operational come early spring when the development next to us hopefully opens up. So.
Thanks, Steve. I move that this board hereby authorize change orders from Bansal Construction for the 5 Mile and Town Center Way traffic signal project in the amount of $55,809.01, utilizing 94 TIF funds and the 2024 budget.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. We hope to be bringing closure to that project here come early February, but appreciate your help and let us move that on. Third item I have is for Little Dry Run sidewalk engineering. This has been a project that we have been on again, off again for a number of years, stemming out of work from our Anderson Trails Plan and our former Transportation Advisory Committee, which was folded into the Anderson Plan Implementation Committee that I mentioned earlier. The request before you is to authorize a contract with Choice 1 for final engineering of a sidewalk connection. We formerly looked at doing a sidewalk connection from the Washington Hills, Washington Woods area from that neighborhood off of White House utilizing Bridle Road, which was not deemed feasible. We're now looking at an opportunity to connect along Little Dry Run Road heading north from Woodstone Drive to Bridle Road to connect to Johnson Hills Park. And we've done some preliminary engineering. We have a concept that we think is feasible, but in order to address a number of concerns from neighbors and to see if we can really thread the needle here, this authorization allows us to proceed into final engineering for that work and with funds from the 1994 TIF. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you. I move to authorize the Township Administrator to enter into contract with Choice 1 Engineering following review by the Law Director for final engineering of a new sidewalk along a portion of Little Dry Run Road between Woodstone Drive and Bridle Road, utilizing 1994 TIF funds and the 2024 budget in an amount not to exceed $24,705, including a 10% contingency of $2,470.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that chance to move that forward as well. And then finally, we have some good news, and this follows up on conversations we've been having with the board for quite a number of years. We were fortunate to apply for it with the board's support back in the summer. The potential installation of 4 DC/FC charging stations, EV charging stations. These are direct current fast charger stations, kind of the top of the line, so to speak, for locations that the township owns or leases. And namely, those locations would be dual chargers, so two chargers at the 4 locations that are noted there. One is for the Bower Preserve at Clough and Nagel. One is for the Anderson Recplex on Beachmont Avenue. One is for the 5 Mile Trailhead on Newtown Road. And the 4th is for the Ohio River Trailhead on Kellogg Avenue. The motion or the resolution before you kind of continues to put us out in front on this project with ODOT. This allows us to enter into agreement with ODOT for that project. The approximately $1.2 million would be completely paid for by OKI carbon reduction funds, as well as toll credits from the state of Ohio. The township is, though, responsible for the engineering design of this and the maintenance period for 5 years. We also can charge recoupment on fees and such like that through that period. So again, we're pleased to hopefully deliver these at those locations. The Kroger location just next to us was the first to introduce these in the township earlier this year, and they're very heavily utilized, at least the times that I go by Kroger. And so these will help to bring that opportunity to a number of facilities that the township owns and that we feel like will be utilized. We did have some questions about why these were selected. Again, the funds are available to local governments, and these are 4 locations that we, the township, either own or, in the case of the 5 Mile Trailhead, have a long-term lease on from the adjacent church property. So the eligibility was somewhat limited. We'll see in the future whether they're open that up to parks or park districts.
I move to adopt a resolution with respect to Anderson Township EV charging project.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. We will certainly keep you updated on all these as they move forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. The next couple of items that I have to present, the request to renew our membership in the Coalition of Large Ohio Urban Townships. This is a subcommittee of the Ohio Township Association consisting of townships that are by definition large as far as population and budget. Mrs. Stone was selected by her peers to serve on the executive committee of CLOUT and has done a great job for us. So I would ask that the board consider renewing our membership for 2025. There's a motion before you.
Thank you. I move to authorize membership in the Coalition of Large Urban Townships, a subcommittee of the Ohio Township Association, for the year 2025 in an amount not to exceed $200.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item I have before the board is a resolution that would extend our lease agreement with the Anderson Area Chamber for space in this building. It is drafted as we discussed at the last board meeting, so that resolution is before you.
I move to adopt a resolution approving a second amendment to lease agreement with the Anderson Area Chamber of Commerce as amended and authorizing its execution and delivery by the township administrator.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Yes. The last item for the 2024 agenda is a request regarding 2025 compensation. There is a motion before you.
Thank you. I move to approve the 2025 compensation adjustments for non-collective bargaining union employees as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, now, I have to, Brian, will you serve as the temporary chair?
Yes.
Okay,
Do you need a second?
oh, yeah.
Second.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
May I have a motion to appoint a Board of Township Trustee Chair for fiscal year 2025?
I move, oh,
Yeah, sorry.
I would move that trustee Lawston be appointed Chair of the Board of Township Trustees for fiscal year '25.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
move that trustee Girth be appointed the board vice chair.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes.
I will return to Board President.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, we have a motion, where's that? Regular meeting schedule.
Okay. Thank you. I move that the regular meetings of this board in January through December 2025 be held on the third Thursday of each month at 5 p.m., beginning with executive session with the public portion of the meetings commencing at 5:30 p.m., and that regular interim workshop meetings of this board be held on the first Thursday of each month at 2 p.m., both unless notice indicating otherwise is duly given. Be it further resolved that the practice and procedure of adopting the agenda, including the rules pertaining to public forum at each regular meeting of this board, shall continue to be the practice and procedure at meetings in 2025.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes. Okay, now we need the motion for the Sunshine Law training designees.
I'd move to appoint Betty Cowan, Molly Moorfield, Lisa Farr, and Katie Arnold as the designees who shall attend the Sunshine Law certification training provided by the Ohio Office of the Ohio Attorney General. I'm sorry, it's what you're rubbing on. And is required by section 149.43E1 of the revised code on behalf of trustees D. Stone, Lexi Lawson, Josh Girth, and fiscal officer Brian Johnson, respectively.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes. Okay, temporary
there's some-
appropriations.
Okay. I move to adopt the temporary appropriations for the fiscal year 2025 as presented by the fiscal officer.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes. Request to Hampton County Auditor.
Maybe you should read this one.
I move that the auditor and treasurer of Hampton County, in accordance with section 321.34 of the revised code, be requested to draw and pay to Anderson Township during fiscal year 2025 upon the written request to the county auditor by Brian M. Johnson, fiscal officer, funds due in any settlement of 2025 derived from taxes or other sources payable by law to the county treasurer and held in the county treasury to the account of Anderson Township and lawfully applicable for the purposes for fiscal year 2025, and the fiscal officer is requested under section 321.342 of the revised code to seek periodic advances of taxes to be drawn on the undivided estate tax fund, and the fiscal officer shall forward to the county auditor a certified copy of this resolution.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes? Thank you. Okay, other township attorneys.
Yes. I move to adopt the resolution and order employing William Patterson, Stephen Swick, Jeffrey Shoskin, Joanne Glass, Benjamin Yoder, and Gary Powell as township's attorneys for particular matters for fiscal year 2025.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes. And finally, what's this one? Resolution, Margaret.
I will adopt a limited home rule resolution appointing Margaret W. Comey and Troutman Pepper Locke LLP as law director for a term ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Girth.
Yes.
Mrs. Stone.
Yes. Welcome back, Margaret.
Because this is a home rule resolution, can you make the initial motion at the top of that page
Okay.
as well?
Okay.
Where is it?
Do you see that?
Was there something higher? Oh.
On 12M?
I see it.
Thank you.
So apologies for that. I move to adopt that as the following resolution, the rule requiring that, is that right? No.
The-
Both
Yes.
of those. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay. I move to adopt the rule requiring that it be read on 2 separate days, be dispensed with.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Oh, yeah, yes, sorry. I'll answer for him too, yes.
Okay.
Okay, do we have to
So
read
do we
that
need to do
thing
the other one
underneath?
again?
Are we good? For the record?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Well, now I don't see it.
Okay, what are we reading
Oh,
now?
one that
okay.
I read?
Yeah, here it is. I move to adopt a limited home rule resolution appointing Margaret Comey and Troutman Pepper Locke LLP as law director for a term ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Are we good, Margaret?
Good. Thanks for keeping us legal.
Legal. Okay, well, that's it. That is the end of our agenda. Let's see, our next regular board meeting will be held on January 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. We go into executive session, so the public part of the meeting will start at 5:30. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's been my pleasure to serve. Everyone have a good year, and I move to adjourn.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.